Welcome to the Conjugate Nation podcast.
Hello, everybody. We are back, as I seem or realize I have a tendency to say on the start of every episode, because it always feels like a little bit of a surprise. Not for lack of interest, but more for lack of time. But here we are. We've organized each other. And, what have you guys been up to? Been busy? I mean, everyone's been kind of cranking away. Where have you guys been? What's been going on?
Cranking through the opens and got to see some of our World's Fittest project and getting ready for the NC Fit games. So yeah, a lot of performance stuff coming up, which has been a blast.
Yeah. Do you have a bunch of people that are heading that direction?
I got two in the for the elite women at the NC Fit games.
Yeah.
And then we got two for semifinals coming up, and it looks like we'll.
Oh, sweet.
Ford will have a team, so it'll be fun to watch those four get after it as well.
Yeah. Shane?
Yeah, right now I've been working with a girl who's she's a figure competitor. She's 47 years old. She's never done a show yet. So her first show is going to be a national qualifier, which I fully expect her to win the overall in that. She's like 9 weeks out, 7% body fat, really well rounded. There's not like a weak muscle group on her build, tiny waist. She's done really well. It's cool to see because she was someone who was like athletic when she's 47 years old. She was athletic when she was younger, but then, she had kids a little bit later, and her kids are, I think they're 14 years old now. So she's like, I need to get into something for myself while I still have time, and it's cool to see because she's, mentally, like, she follows her nutrition plan to a T. She does everything that's asked of her for her training, which is pretty extensive because we needed to put a lot of size on her in a short time period. She's been with me for like a year now. So we needed to make a lot of changes and improvements and then shape her. So, like bringing up rear delts and balancing out certain areas, it's like bodybuilding is a couple things. One, it's like you're an artist, like it's a sculpture with a live body, right? So if someone doesn't listen to what you have to say, you have this like sculpture that's constantly changing for the worse while you're trying to make it better, which makes it very counterproductive. But when you're lucky and you have somebody that is doing what you tell them, it's like you have the perfect like clay to work with, right? You get the perfect, material to mold. And so she's listened to everything, which has been phenomenal, which is fun for me. I think people, watching this, whether you're someone who works out or you're a coach, if you're a coach, you can sympathize with this or you will experience it eventually. And if you're not and you're someone listening, I want you to think about this when you work with a coach. When you're a strength athlete or like say an athlete or a physique type competitor, so whether you're trying to improve time, distance, or weight, or whatever it is, or you're trying to improve a look, you're our artwork, right? You are our life's work. And if you don't listen to what we tell you and give 100% of what you're doing, you're just basically smacking the artist in the face. Because no matter how hard I work, your result will be what people think of me. And the problem with that is if you didn't give your all, then it doesn't show what I'm actually fully capable of. But also I don't get to enjoy it as much, right? As a coach, I'm here for people's quality of life. I want to optimize their quality of life. And if you don't have the discipline it takes to optimize your quality of life, you're going to make me look, people aren't going to understand what I'm capable of, which could mean that someone locally doesn't come to me because they didn't think I did a great job with that person. When maybe, I might be their best option and could take them as far as they want to go. But also we don't get to enjoy that. You guys, like when you work with an athlete and someone just does something that even like one of your own athletes even blows your own mind, you're like, dude, that was wicked. You get excited about it. You love it. Like you're so thankful to be a part of it, and it just validates your efforts and, the evolutions that you try to bring forward to the strength and conditioning community, So, lucky right now I have someone who's willing to listen. And when you're out there, man, hook your coaches up, man. You're only doing yourself a favor if you do that. Okay.
What hours are they putting in for like a week? I mean, like 9 weeks out, how many hours a week are they training?
So she's getting about 2 hours a day of training, 6 days a week, on just the strength work. Cardio is, I think she's right around 30 to 45 minutes right now, like 4 days to 5 days a week. And then she's just so depleted, you know, like I said, she's already at 7% body fat. You know, you take
now.
Yeah, 9 weeks out.
Whoa.
You know, so you know,
Man, that
so
is really low for a female.
yeah. So she's shredded. She'll be really tight. She'll come in a couple weeks ahead, which is great because then you can you come in ahead of time, then you know your athlete's ready. They know they're ready. You don't have to worry about cortisol or anything releasing because of stress. And then you can actually put food back in and increase their glycogen stores a little bit, and you can actually get a little more mass on them and fill them out before they go in. And then, you know, it's nice, like if you get someone really close, they might not have to water cut if they don't need to, but water cutting is kind of the way to go. But you want to do it on a minimal end. You know, the bigger the cut, the more variation between individuals of how long before they bleed over. So if you get them right, that you get them like as close as you can get before the water cut happens, then you have a minor water cut and you can really bring in the detail, but you don't have to risk timing with an individual.
Yeah.
So, but you know, people don't realize too that, you know, when you're coming down like that, you're so depleted. It's really hard just to get through your exercises and workouts. Right. So
yeah,
those exercise selection is huge.
Big cut pieces are really interesting. Like with Jamie fighting in the UFC, I mean, she's cutting from like that high, like 146 to 146, 148, like 4 weeks out, and then ends up down at 126 to fight. And I mean, that's a progression down to like, I mean, and for her water loading into fight week, I mean, I have to have a look at our numbers, but I feel like, I mean, if the day before we've got it down to like 131, I think that we've got 5 pounds to go and like, like less than 24-hour period, then it's a pretty good spot. But man, like, I mean, women cut in my experience have been much harder than men. I feel like 5 pounds for a dude, and not just for body weight. I mean, I even think at the same body weight, it seems like women peel off that weight way slower in that last little bit. I mean, the first time we did a cut with her, I thought, I was like, oh, 5 pounds. I mean, that's easy. And then you realize you've lost like 1.1 in an hour and you're like, oh, like, well, okay, this is going to take a little more effort.
Men on average, we're talking about a really hard cut. You can usually get 3 to 4% more of a cut out of men. And the reason why, when you look at it, your muscle has a lot of water in it, right?
Yeah.
Look at the lean muscle mass on men versus women. You know, body fat on men is naturally lower. You know, so if you look at a world class UFC fighter who's a male who's lean, like, you know, like in one of the lower weight classes, and you take a female, the males usually have a lower body fat, right? So if you look at in the same sport, people in the same weight classes, you know, men usually have lower body fat, which means that they have more muscle mass for that size, right? And then that more muscle mass carries more water in the body. So that's why men have a easier go at cutting weight than women do. Or they can cut more, I should say. I don't want to say easier go. I just want to say there's a bigger variation between, you know, and throughout the years, that's something that I always had a formula with what men and women could do cutting, but there are outliers, you know, like I was telling you, I have that girl that, you know, Natalie Harrington, who broke multiple world records, who was a 156 lifter, and I cut her to 123 and she weighed 156 on the platform, you know? So, and when you're talking about a girl who's, I don't know, she's 4'11", 5 foot tall, I think around 4'11", you know, that's a big variation, you know. She was very lean when we started. I mean, she really was right around probably 7% also herself. So, but the good thing is she had a lot of muscle mass on her, obviously, to be that weight. So then she cut more like a guy did, you know. But that took years of lifting to have that kind of muscle mass. And you don't see that kind of muscle mass in women that's comparative like men, you know, if you're outside of like bodybuilding, powerlifting, those types of things, you know, pure strength sports, right? So, yeah, so that's good. You guys are cutting good weight on her. That's a good amount of weight to cut. She's doing well. She's
doing great.
She's had full energy, you know, through her fights and stuff. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it was pretty cool actually. We she just signed her next fight is June 14th.
Okay.
But it's pretty cool. Between her last fight was December 14th, I think. So she's had a bunch of months, but early Feb, we actually went down to the UFC Performance Institute, and we're able to, everything there is fully, it's a crazy facility, and everything's set up there for the athletes to be there as a campus. So there's cafeteria, all the services, gyms for training, cool. Everything you can want. And they actually will, if you book, you can actually run through a battery of tests. So you can do a full spectrum of tests over. It's supposed to be three days of testing. We squished it down a little bit because we just only had so much time there. And it was really cool to sort of run her through this spectrum of tests, and then sit down with I think it was a team of 5 of their divisions who sit down, and each one speaks to kind of their nutrition component, strength, cardiovascular endurance, those sort of anaerobic pieces, and they put everything up on the TV, and they talk it through, and then they also can show the stats for their other athletes they've tested in the division. Obviously there's no names attached to those, but they can show the average, the best they've tested, and then same thing across the women's division. And it's pretty cool actually to sort of see that kind of data that's going on out there, and what they're up to, just collecting that information. But
well, I know weight cuts, say it too,
small weight cut feels like living the dream.
Share the results, because obviously she went down there and it's more than just doing the test. She smashed those tests.
Yeah, she performed very well. Yeah,
which had to be
she had some numbers at it. Yeah. She, went super good. That's a combo of we're working with Adam Knifer as well. So he manages her conditioning stuff, and I take care of her strength component. And then she's got her striking coach and a grappling coach. And it's a full team of people, but yeah, she performed extremely well for the overall women's division in a bunch of those tests. Yeah. Super fun.
Nice. Yeah. Wouldn't expect anything different.
Right. Yeah. It's been, good times. That High Rock stuff. Do you have anyone doing High Rocks? Either of you guys?
No. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Interesting between, what's going on. I was going to say with you guys, I didn't know where your athletes, were. So if they were going High Rocks more towards the games, or, how that's going,
Chris, do you guys have?
Not nobody specific, but I think it's another cool, hybrid sport that, people can get out and enjoy. And I think one of the big, where people get uncomfortable doing CrossFit competitions is you don't necessarily know what you're going to do, and you sign up before, and the workouts come out, and then you're stuck with what you have to do, and that unknown can be a lot for people to compete. So with High Rocks, it's kind of nice, to get involved with right away. You can do something. I haven't worked with anybody, but obviously, they took first in their division and qualified for the world champs and world championships, and then I think they finished 7th overall, which it's not surprising. That guy's endurance capacity is world class. I would say that guy can do a lot of things for long periods of time and a lot of different modal domains.
Totally. Yeah, it's super interesting to see. We have a couple girls who have been getting after it, pretty motivated, and it's pretty cool to see they're phenomenal athletes, huge endurance background, been CrossFitting, but just always that they're both low body weight, they're lightweight, high speed, low drag, and in the CrossFit world, they're man, they love competing, they love CrossFit, they're super excited about it, but they're always gonna be up against it when it comes to heavy barbells, et cetera. And I think it was really cool for them to have a chance to be well, let's try High Rock. So they just kind of signed up for their first one, went the open division because they're well, we don't know if we can move the weight of the pro division. And then they won Anaheim last fall in the open division with the fastest double pairs female time of any women. And obviously that's lighter than the pro women. But I think it was one of the fastest individual pairs open times that they've had overall for High Rocks. And then they were well, we'll see, because they didn't make there wasn't a qualifying option for them in Anaheim. So then they signed up and went to Vegas, and they won Vegas as well. And that qualified them for Worlds. But we went, and then that's what we tied the UFC stuff in with Jamie. And then went down because, Adam and Weeds was there running it. Justin and Ellie did it. James Sprague was there. Man, I try to think. Trevor, who does the nutrition stuff and works with the team, he was down there and got after it. I think they sucked in Justin's sister ended up doing it. Like it was a huge amount of people who ended up getting after it. One of our other girls came down, and it was interesting to see. Like I think all of those people just do CrossFit, and like our girls do some specialty work as it relates to push pull on the sled, like that rope drag. There's a couple pieces that were worth practicing, but predominantly they added a volume of running to their CrossFit base, and have been. I mean, they're headed to Worlds. 3 of the girls are headed to Worlds now for mid-June, and it's kind of cool. It was a great community feel down there. Like it's cool to see it as like a really interesting option. Like it's a good sort of like another thing that's going on out there where people are just stoked to get after fitness, you know? Yeah. And just, I think, I don't know. I hope that overall it's positive and the feed is towards overall just improves the volume of people interested or getting exposure to fitness, because I think that certainly that interest could lead people towards CrossFit. And then also gives those people who are doing, I mean, we've got lots of guys who've been doing CrossFit for a lot of years and are just like, hey, this sounds great. Like just something different to switch gears, do something else. Like, I mean, you know, it's a single longer CrossFit workout. And then it's very tangible, like you were saying, Chris. So yeah, it's interesting to see. It'll be super interesting to see where it goes. And then, like you were saying, World Fitness Project, like, you know, there's a lot on the go for fitness out there in 2025. Yeah, that's cool. Any new movements, new equipment? What have you guys been using, getting up to?
I bought 3 new pieces of equipment. Nothing, they're machines, which I normally, like don't do a lot with machines, but I bought 3 new pieces because we go up to, my mom lives in Michigan, and right across the line in Toledo, Ohio, it's right up north. There's a gym up there. A guy bought a long time ago. My mom's been a member for a long time. He bought a mall and outfitted the whole mall. So it's a mall. It's big. It's massive. So it's like he has a women's only area that's bigger than my gym. He has a women only area that has also an Olympic pool in it. Then they have another area that has a couple Olympic pools. And then they took all the top manufacturers and they bought the full line of all their stuff. So when the military came out, U.S. military came out because it was the only place in the whole country they can try every different brand equipment and get to test them side by side to see what they like and what they want to order.
Crazy.
Then they have an area for like elderly. Now they have an open area that everybody can go to, right? So their free weight section is bigger than my whole gym. Their equipment section is bigger than my whole gym. Their women's only is bigger than my whole gym. Their cardio part is bigger than my whole gym. It's like I have an 8,000 square foot gym. It's not huge, but it's not tiny either, right? And then they have a kids area that's bigger than my gym. And their kids area, this is cool. Like for little kids, they have like stuff to play on. So think of like going up and over like rope ladders and going under and through stuff and doing like agility stuff.
Ninja gym style?
Yeah, just for like kind of, little kids. And they'll have like, sandbags and med balls for little kids and like stuff like that. But they also have machines that if the kid's 9 years old or and up, I'd say on average, they have like full lines of machines that look just like the full size machines that we have in our gym by the same companies that are cut down for kids and built for kids. And then so they have trainers on staff that like when parents come in to train, like if you start on the hour, if you start like 3, 4, 5, 6, they have a trainer in there. It doesn't cost any extra. The kid goes in there while you get to work out and you get your kid afterwards. And so what they ended up doing, which is kind of neat too, is the guy's like, I just don't want any excuses for anybody. So he put a laundry mat in there. They have like a hair salon, with that stuff, but they have you can get your new tires or get your oil changed there, and you can schedule it so you can get your workout and it'll be done by the time you're done with your workout, so you don't have to wait on it. So they do like anything the guy could think of that was an excuse for somebody, they just put in there, right? They have a track in there and stuff. I mean, it's kind of cool. So, for me and my gym's 24 hours now, so it's not just me working with athletes or just personal training. So at the same time, I have to add stuff in that's good for the 24-hour part, and because I can't neglect people in there. So I was out there and I tried this Paramount. They have this dual access equipment. So like the lat pull down comes straight down to the side, handles rotate and stuff, comes straight down to the side, comes overhead and down. And then they like a row machine where it's narrow and it rotates all the way out for like a wide grip row. But the thing is, like, using those two pieces, I can't reduplicate the exact same feeling with cable machines or straight weight. And I've never found any other back machines that feel exactly like that. So that's why I ended up getting those. They're old. I don't want to say old. They're not old. They're older. I mean, I don't know how old the pieces I bought are. I literally started looking that night for the same pieces, and within a month I had them. So, they work good. Try them. Outside of that, I've always had a ton of equipment, so I don't think necessarily have anything new as far as that goes. Just working on different components in the fitness arena as far as that goes, pushing endurance a little bit more on for strength athletes and stuff like that, and just trying to get a little more well-rounded on the different types of strength needed for sport, right? Really trying to, like, you look at like powerlifters, and if you talk about agility, no one's going to think about agility with a powerlifter. But once you get the higher level you get somebody, the less return you get out of that, the things you normally do with them, the strength work, you're getting returns, but at the top it starts to get lower, right? You have to introduce, like we would talk about, you have to introduce 15% or more new exercises per year to learn at the fastest rate possible, learn new movements. So if I want athletes to be able to make adjustments and be able to listen to me, why can't I do agility work with them? Why can't I take a powerlifter and do ladder drills to warm up, or any other agility kind of work, right? The faster their articulation is, even like hand-eye coordination, you see Formula One drivers, where like their coach will drop a ball and they have to catch them and stuff like that, like little like quick things like that. Those are all good, like it's all usable, and it transfers over to the ability to learn new movement faster, which means when I give input to the athlete can utilize that input in a faster manner, in a more precise manner, and then they become a higher level athlete. At some point, we don't know, like you have to overturn every stone and be thorough about everything you do. Because when you're talking about some of these big numbers that are getting pushed out there, and you're talking about breaking a world record, I know if they show up to break a world record in squat, bench, and deadlift, they have to be strong. No joke. They have to be able to recover, of course. We have to be injury resilient. Yeah, they're moving a lot of weight. That's a necessity. But it's like the whole thing we talk about. If it's not your advantage, it's your disadvantage. So we can't give up a disadvantage anywhere. And you want to introduce new stuff to get them excited and completely new things to an athlete. Like you're an athlete, like anytime you get something new, like you're talking about the Hyrox things, right? And you're taking these athletes who are doing just CrossFit for a long time. It's something similar. All that CrossFit training transfers over 100% to them, but it's just a different format for them to go do something and stay really peaked and excited about. So just looking for stuff like that and challenging them in things with balance and agility and stuff like that,
We've been doing a similar thing this last while with the lifters for sure on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So on those like accessory days that aren't our primaries, we've been pretty consistent with that using a slack block. So starting the session with that balance piece first, and then moving into a jump variation. So one day we cycle single leg jumps. And then we have a progression they kind of work through where we start low and then build up kind of an inch a week. And when you work through one, so we'd start with like single leg box jump. We'd work that until you're like, where you get to the point where like safety and being able to get the work done becomes threatened. And then we'd move from single leg box jump to single leg box jump over. So not entirely over the box, but sort of up onto the box and then jumping down the other side on a single leg, and just really focusing on that knee tracking position. So that knee and hip tracking, and again, starting low and building it up. And then from there, moving to a single leg box jump and then a lateral jump down onto that single leg. And the other day, we're just doing, weighted box jump. And then from progressing from weighted, when you've kind of built that up to as heavy as you're going to, or high as you're going to get, then stripping the vest, starting a little lower, and then continue to build up past that. And from there, digging into some we've been doing a lot of EMOMs, but also a little more CrossFit, like CrossFit with just out leaning away from we're not using a barbell on those days. We're not doing midline work on those days. On those conditioning pieces, we're focusing on like volume of machine work. And then, I mean, Russian kettlebell swing, yesterday we did pull-ups, push-ups, and machine work, and not necessarily even for time, just the athlete having the opportunity to get what they need out of it. So just moving blood and then bringing up that GPP on those like 2 accessory days has been, I think, really high value. I think it's really valuable executing on the opportunity to have lifters be a little more athletic, be able to manage their joints through like a little more dynamic planes than squat, bench, dead. And it feels like slack block takes about 6 minutes. The jumps, we do 25 by 1, takes whatever, we'll do them on the 10 or 12 seconds. So that takes a bunch more minutes. And that conditioning piece, I mean, that whole session, you're in and out in 45 minutes if you're getting the most out of it. And then finishing on mobility. And I think it's improving our week as far as athletes' recovery inside of the training week itself. And then also we're seeing just a continued overall conditioning piece that improves, where the athletes on Fridays or those dynamics can afford to shorten the rest periods between their primary work and accessory work. Like we're doing our speed squats predominantly now on the 40 seconds. And I mean, it's unpleasant, but it's not an issue.
That's the thing with powerlifters. Like, you're an athlete. Just because some people are like, well, I can carry a lot of weight. Do you need to?
Yeah.
I mean, most powerlifters carry too much body fat. Most do. Okay. And a lot of them use an excuse like, oh, I'm going to get bigger. And it's, everything's optimal. Optimize your nutrition, optimize your body weight for your structure and your height. Optimize your longevity. If you don't optimize your body fat, you're not going to optimize your longevity in sport or in life. It's not an excuse to be like, barely walk. Like, well, I can squat, bench, and deadlift, but I can barely put my foot up to step up a curb over a curb or something. It's like, no, that's not. It's not a badge of honor. What you want to see is a big muscular power lifter, male or female, and have them move in a manner that looks like a professional athlete from another sport, like a soccer player, a rugby player, someone in CrossFit doing workouts. It's just they have a little more muscle mass, so they might move just a little bit different, or not move just as fast or as crisp, but you should see that movement. I look at Gunther Warner. Does that guy move like an athlete? He doesn't move like he's just a shot putter, right? Like the guy moves very well for a guy his size. You watch him run hurdles and you're like, he's an athletic dude. Well, does he look like someone winning a gold medal Olympics in hurdling? No, but he looks like an athletic guy who looks like he, hurdles as well as like a top tier high school, hurdler does, which is phenomenal for a guy who weighs the amount that he does and as tall as he is. Right. And that's what I feel like powerlifters should look like. We see a lot of Olympic lifters who are very athletic, and you see powerlifters who are in the lower weight classes, and once in a while someone higher, but I think
it's changing across the weight classes. I think you're seeing it becoming more and more common that those great powerlifters, some of those guys are very athletic.
Everybody should be.
Yeah.
They're showing, if one is, they all can be. People are, we've talked about this a million times for years, right? I've always wanted, my powerlifters to be athletic, have great endurance, have, great agility, mobility, all these components, that do increase your quality of life or your options. Things can be taken away. Someone can, have an accident or injury that doesn't allow them to be the best in the world in powerlifting anymore, but they might be able to go to a different sport that doesn't have as high of an intensity as like that much weight, and maybe the resistance is lower, but they have a mindset, they have a body they've worked on for years, right? And if they've trained themselves to be athletic and have all these good positive components, they can switch into other sports and be very successful in a short time period and still have a good quality of life. And just saying, man, I wrapped, last 15 years of my life in a powerlifting, now I can't do anything with all this time I put in, Yeah.
So. And I commenting that together with the lifting, I think one, it does have a positive effect on the performance. So if you're looking to improve 1RM squat, bench, dead, bringing up that GPP, having that stability of all the little muscles and, joint control that you're getting from like, working on single leg stuff, working on side, especially dynamic jumps. I mean, you need to be very thoughtful about getting into that work when you're doing single leg, because I mean, the most important thing is that it's done well first, and then you allow it to like build it low and slow, cook it like some ribs, give it time, let it sort of like, bring out the juices. But not only do I think it drives performance, I think it also is just rounding out a good quality life. So as someone who's lifting, whether you're competing or not, I mean, I think adding those 2 sessions in throughout the week builds a very well-rounded program, so that similar to the way a CrossFitter might might switch or to High Rocks or go do a High Rocks event and they're just I'm just gonna go do it. I think that a well-rounded powerlifter making good decisions, given their like range of motion, would be the only thing to add to that might prevent them from being able to get into CrossFit workouts here and there. Like we certainly have people who will jump in on CrossFit workouts and be more than capable of doing well, being safe, and moving through it, producing a good result.
One of the things that people a lot of times really, kind of don't think about is, we were talking earlier today about, like the podcast I did with Zach Avanesh, and we were talking about, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. We were talking about Zach Avanesh earlier. There was something you brought up.
Well, it was interesting. So I was listening to you on the podcast with Zach, the first one of the two. What's his podcast called again?
Underground Strength.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, and they did. You guys live streamed it to Instagram. Do you know if it's available on like Apple and Spotify?
I do think he puts it on other things. I'm not too sure, but I do think he does, because I've been on 3 with him and we've used a different platform every time. So I'm sure it's out there somewhere else.
That dude's super smart and been out a long time. Like, what you were episode 500?
Yeah.
I mean, that's sad. We're on 17. It's been 2.5 years.
he's a good guy, man, and he stays on it, and he does a lot of good things for kids and people growing up and raising up in sports.
Yeah, he's doing some awesome stuff, and I was listening to that episode, and it was interesting because you were saying on there that you felt like if the lifters at Westside Barbell had, instead of worked in their AM PM crews, worked one-on-one with Louie, they would have produced less high-end results than they did.
Yeah, here's the thing. That sounds controversial, right? People are like, oh my God, he doesn't think much of Lou. Like, that could be farther from the truth, right? Louie was my mentor. Louie is someone that I don't have a negative thing to say about the guy. I hold him into the highest esteem, as a human being. He was phenomenal to me, and I saw him do amazing things for other people. As a strength coach, you can't get any better than that. That's the pinnacle of what being a strength coach is. So it's not knocking it. So how is it if I think that he's the pinnacle of being a strength coach, is he's as high, that's what you want to be when you grow up. If you're a strength coach, you want to have that kind of a passion for that long, that kind of a drive, that kind of ability to learn and to be able to take that information in and turn it and utilize it and constantly keep evolving it, So, then why do I say that, right? Well, it's pretty simple. And with Louie, because, I can't tell you how many times athletes have told me that I was absolutely insane or crazy for the numbers I told them they were going to do. And then they did it. And I heard it over. And then the same athlete, here's your next goal. You're nuts. I'm like, you just said that about me and I proved you wrong. Yeah, but there's just no way. And then they would do it. Now I'm picking up another set of numbers. You're nuts. I've heard it all the time for an extremely long time. Well, the hard part is when you're working with the athlete one-on-one, what Lou would get out of somebody faster than just being in a group would be if you had a mobility issue, if you had a deficiency in strength, if your technique was poor, things like that. Lou worked with everybody at Westside, right? Like, I mean, you had a problem, he fixed it. He saw something he didn't like, he would tell you, hey, you're weak here, slow here, you have a mobility issue here, you don't have enough endurance, you're not heavy enough, you're too heavy. Like, he was 100% honest with you about everything you needed to do. The problem isn't about the coaching. It's not about the knowledge base at Westside Barbell. That wouldn't have been the problem. The problem is that you only have a small percentage of athletes that don't need to see someone else do something extraordinary or something they thought was unbelievable to do something unbelievable. The majority of people and athletes need to see someone else or have someone else ahead of them where they can get, maybe finally beat that person who's in their training group, and now they're within striking distance of a world record. Now they believe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're asking somebody to go to it from a 1,500 pound total to a 2,500 pound total, and like they look at that and they can't comprehend that. But if you have someone at a 2,400 pound total or 2,430, and in the gym they just beat somebody who has a 2,500 pound total in the same weight class, and they beat them in a lift, now they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, this is within striking distance. This is within reach, right? And what you see is, there's times at Westside you're in a group and here's the number 1 through 5 in the world in 308 weight class. All the top 5 are competing against each other. Well, they're training together, right? So if number 5 wants to be number 1, he first has to beat number 4. Well, number 4 goes, I want to be number 1, but I got to beat number 3, and I definitely can't let number 5 beat me. Number 1 in the world has a number 2 guy right with him every day and keep him in sights. So the issue with that is the number 1 guy wants to stay number 1, so he wants to stay ahead. The number 2 guy sees what can be done, and the number 1 guy was doing stuff when the number 2 guy used to be number 20, number 30, and when he was number 20, number 30, was like, dude, there's no way in hell to beat that guy. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But then he's closed 24 places or 23 places or whatever, and now he's on his heels. And if they mess up or have an off or bad day, the wolves go out to feed. You know what I'm saying? Like here's the predators are out, right? And so it leads to a couple things. One, the intensity goes up. The belief goes up. Louis can't force intensity out of somebody. He can't force someone's belief. He can only give knowledge, right? And it's up to someone else to listen. But when you're sitting there and you have 20 guys in the gym that are all doing more than you, and they're like, you need to listen to them. And they can all do things that you can't do. That makes it much easier to listen to. If you're sitting there with one person, you believe them, or like I said, I had a lot of athletes, like I said, we're topped out right now at 143 world records out of the gym. That's not age group. That's just straight up all time world records. And you still would have somebody I don't know if I'll be capable of doing that in that time period. Well, that's okay. You're not the coach. It's not for you to know. It's for me to know. But it doesn't matter. They need to believe it before it can happen, right? So, what we always do is we look at the lowest common denominator, lowest hanging fruit. So we see hey, hamstrings got to get stronger for squats. Well, what gets my hamstring stronger? Okay, good mornings gets my hamstring stronger. What gets good morning stronger? Well, side to sides on the GHD face down and glute ham raises. Okay, well, what gets side to sides and glute ham raises stronger? And you go down as far down the rabbit hole as you can and eliminate any weakness and bring all that strength up. So we have that ability to do that, but we also have to do that with the psychology of the athlete. And the easiest way is producing an environment. That's where your special operations community is phenomenal, because they deal with a very high intensity, very high expectations very frequently, right? And you can only adapt to the heavy stress placed upon you mentally and physically. They have higher levels of psychological stress and physical stress, and they adapt to these stresses in a phenomenal manner, and that allows them to achieve. I guarantee a lot of those guys, when they first start special operations, if they have a very long career and they have a lot of experience, that they will end up doing things that they never thought they would be capable of doing, but they didn't jump there because they got into special operations. They didn't just jump there because they were given knowledge. Knowledge is huge, right? You can give someone knowledge on tactics and how to shoot and how to recover and how to, choose the correct gear and how to handle different situations, different climates, different altitudes. All these things can be taught, right? But until a person believes they can do something, that information is kind of useless. There's a lot of people who have the potential and capabilities to do things, but you don't have the correct training group. You don't have the correct atmosphere. Lou always said, number 1 is knowledge. Number 2 is atmosphere. Equipment comes last. I love equipment. I have a ton of equipment. We all love equipment, right? It's fun. But the thing is, if you don't have knowledge, you don't have you don't have the environment, then who cares about the equipment? You don't have anything. You give me the right mental state and the right, people in the right training group and the right knowledge, we'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. I don't need to have the latest, greatest of everything. I will figure it out. We'll build it. We'll make it. It doesn't matter. I need 2 things. The third will show up at some point. I only need the knowledge and the environment and the atmosphere. So, that's why. It's not because Lou wasn't an amazing coach. There's not a negative thing I can say about him as a coach. it doesn't change. It's not anything to do with the coaching. It has to do with individuals' beliefs. They need a role model experience in front of them. When you see the intensity, and it's way more intensity you've ever done, we have a choice. Do you want to compete in the sport or don't you? The door is right there. You can leave if it's not for you. But if this is what you want, if this is what you choose, choose the ball or the sword, right? If you choose the sword, well, we're going to show you the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that normal, what's your normal, I guess, would be what that makes me think about, is when you train alone in your garage, you are the standard. You're the best and you're also the worst. And it's really then like, what are you leaning on that makes things normal? I mean, you're looking at stuff on the internet, but people do crazy stuff on the internet. I mean, there's so many amazing lifters and everything else. And then they're like, then it feels like they get written off as outliers. They don't become, oh, that guy did that, so I can do that. It's having those people and that big environment in the gym. I feel like that makes a huge difference, is having those people who are a little bit better, who are a little bit worse, and pushing on you, like you said, and then having those outliers. I mean, they are a part of the food chain. I mean, when you have a huge squatter or a huge deadlifter, I mean, it does show what you're capable of.
You also have an obligation as a partner, right? There's times you've been in training, like when I went to a side and you get any training in there, you're like, you got to give everything you have and throw down, because, ultimately, even if you're you're there and you're not a great lifter yet, but you're given an opportunity to train there, you have to throw down, because, you don't want to disrespect the place. You don't want to disrespect your training partners. You want to find something you can bring to the table, right? So, if you're in a position out there, if anybody out there is in a position where they have an opportunity to train in a place that has athletes at a much higher level than what you're currently capable of doing, bring something to the table, right? Now, you can bring intensity, you can bring discipline, you can be the first one at the gym every time. You can make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. You can eat perfect. You can hydrate perfect. You can go to bed at the exact same time. Give yourself plenty of sleep. You can make sure you have a positive attitude every time you come in the gym. Make sure if you're not the strongest lifter, that's okay. Be the best spotter. When you spot and learn how every single person in your group likes their handoffs or likes being spotted, or the way their personality works to get the most out of them psychologically to hype them up, get those things. By the time you perfect those things, shortly after, you're going to be gunning on something. If you have a one muscle group that's really strong, force the other people to try to keep up in that one. That's going to do your training partner some good. If you're the strongest triceps in the gym, you can help everybody. Everybody's bench in the gym. Push them on tricep work. But the thing about all this is we learned a lot through Atmosphere, right? Atmosphere shows you what you really are, what you're really capable of. There are some gangsters who can get it done in a garage gym, and like CrossFit, I really like. I appreciate that so many people got garage gyms out of CrossFit. But even if you have a garage gym, it wouldn't hurt you to go once or twice a week to a gym where there's people in there to compete against, to see what your levels. People are going to want to chase you. You're going to want to catch other people. It takes excuses away, but it teaches you a lot. And some of those things it teaches you are things that you might not necessarily expect. It's like this, I tell people not to miss weight, right? I like, work up to the heaviest weight you can successfully complete. And people are like, okay, but why? Well, Westside would be a great example of that. You get a training group, like I said, you get number 1 through 5 in the world training together. And then number 2 is closing the distance on number 1. And then the top guy, they pick a squat, let's say a squat, pick a squat variation that is his worst. And the number 2 guy, it's his best. So he's like, I know this is my best variation of the squat that we're doing today. So he attacks and he beats that guy by 5 pounds. Well, that guy barely got his squat. The number 1 guy barely got a squat. So he wants to go another jump and wants to beat this guy by 5 pounds, which means he has to add 10 pounds to a weight he barely got before. So now he barely misses it, like an inch from lockout, barely misses it. He's ticked. He doesn't want number 2 to think he's got a chance at him. So I'm taking that again. Now he takes again, he misses twice. Well, big guy's nervous system wise, if that's a heavyweight, oh, he's screwed now. Like, it's going to be a good 3 weeks or so before he's back on track. So next week they come back to a lower body mode. Now we're deadlifting next week. Guy takes it to him again because his nervous system isn't where it should be. But he's running a ragged limit and misses a weight. Doesn't retake it, but just misses a weight because it's a weight he should be able to do, but his nervous system's not peaked anymore. His nervous system's degraded. So now it's like 3 weeks of getting beat. Now he's got to back off a little bit and work up to say 90% or 95%, but not go full tilt because he's got to get his nervous system in check. So now his training partner, who's number 2 in the world, has now beat him for 4 or 5 weeks. 4 or 5 weeks of an empowerment when you were number 2 for a couple years is huge. It's hard to get back. A lot of times that individual can become something new. And, they always say, like, when someone gets a Majoan, the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, right? When the person gets the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, they always say it changes the rider. They're not the same rider again. You see riders do some stuff that was never expected of them once they put that yellow jersey on. Because once they put it on, you can feel that energy. You go to Westside Barbell, you could cut the energy in there. You could feel it. You wanted to give energy back to that building because you've never felt an energy like that before. And the only way I know to make sure that energy is like that every time I go back in is to try to add energy to that room, right? And so you got to do something to add energy to that room. And so those things start to add up. But out of that, you learn stuff. Like we saw what happened when a guy who was number 1 got beat by a guy who was number 2 in the gym, and then they tried chasing them with a reckless abandonment, to not let them think they actually could beat them. And next thing you know, they actually beat themselves. It wasn't the number 2 guy beating the number 1 guy. He beat him in his best variation versus his worst variation. The number 1 guy is probably still stronger. But 5 weeks of getting beat, is he still going to be a number 1 guy? Can he come back and put those numbers up? Does he do what it takes to recover? Or does he keep trying to hammer down to relentlessly chase that guy? He's got to recover, be patient, dot his I's, cross his T's, and come back, right? And then he has a chance. But he also empowered somebody. So now that he empowered somebody, he might not be number 1 anymore. But it gives a dogfight. But the one thing I can guarantee is both of them are going to hit bigger numbers they've ever hit in their life when they get up to their next meet, right? Because they're going at it now. Well, then, does number 3 want number 2 to gap him? No. So number 3, number 4, number 5 just jumped on the bandwagon. They're chasing too, right? And so that's how things evolve.
I think that works at all levels too.
Mm-hmm.
Like just if you're in a group of like 3, 4, 5 people, I mean, even if your group is not the top group, you're still got your group's people who are number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're sort of pressing on that. And that's what you're sort of counting on, is having those training partners who are kind of pushing on you, it's a huge piece.
I could be a low level CrossFit, just a local, maybe like a low level local competitor who doesn't win anything locally, right? And Jesse's training in the gym with me, and he wins everything locally, and he's a good national level competitor, right? And let's say Jesse always beats me by an average of 20% on every CrossFit WOD, right? If I close that gap to 10%, that's a win for me. I'm never going to beat Jesse in a competition, but I cut the gap in half between him and I. That is enough. That's motivation. That's atmosphere. Like, trust me, that atmosphere, even though I'm not number 1, is killer for me right now. I close the distance on a national level competitor. I cut our gap in half. Doesn't matter. I'll never beat him. I might not. It doesn't matter. What matters is, because like I might say, well, I'm going to train CrossFit 3 times a week. I'm willing to eat 85% of my meals will be perfect. Enjoy myself 15% of the time. Jesse might be like, 100% of my meals are performance, and I work out 6 days a week, twice a day. I'm never going to beat him. He's putting more time and more effort in. But the atmosphere that was in the gym allowed me to close a gap as much as I was going to be able to close with the amount of time and effort I was willing to put in. That's a huge win. That's a massive win. That's all I can ask for, So, and like Chris, I'm sure you have, like experiences like that. And Chris, the one thing about Chris, I'll say, like, got a good personality, just a nice dude who's really got a good positive energy. Having a coach with the right energy for what you're trying to do is huge. And this atmosphere in the gym can be brought upon in multiple different ways.
Yeah, I would say that's one of Fork's strengths, being able to go in as somebody who obviously knew a lot about Fork going in, but I've never been inside the gym. And I would say that that's one of the positives I've seen of writing scores on the board. They still do that on the whiteboard. Scores get written up. And it's not to see like who's doing the absolute most, but a lot of us are picking people that we know, like, hey, this person's inside my reach, or this person got this score. It means, oh man, I got to be in this kind of pace that I'm thinking of. So for those people that are looking for that little bit of edge where you're trying to get that extra 1% out of your, or that extra 5% out of your workout each time you go in there and do it, having those scores up just are a good way to, look at it. And then, when you do get into that realm of somebody that's bigger, but I do think that for the ordinary person, having some of those, targets, and, we always give credit to the people that go first, right? Because it's like you get the name score on the board where it's like, hey, I know that score now, like, so how can I go and I beat that? So you're making people below you that are coming in later, you're making them scores. That's something I think that's been pretty cool that I've been able to just observe. One of the things for our conjugate class, what we've been really starting to push, because there was so much learning curve, we're just getting ready to hit the year mark, or the 9-month mark here, is there's just so much learning about the systems that we're using the bands, developing speed, all of those things, learning all the variants, where there was almost so much learning, it just wasn't quite fast enough. So right now, what I've really been emphasizing is like, be a pace setter. So when people are coming in, like set a pace, not just like, can you get this work done well and quickly, but also like, hey, who's listening? Who's got the most accessory work? And, whenever that's there, I try to give props to, we had a high rep D-ball squats as like a little finisher a few weeks back. And like, I went in thinking like, yeah, I'll probably hit the 70 for that. And it's like, well, I came in and actually AJ's partner, real well, JC, she had done a 70, and it's like, damn, now I got to do the 100. So it's like
right.
First thing at the gate, and it was like, that sort of mentality of where just, and, those little things, if you have a good atmosphere, to your point there, Shane, and I can't speak on, say that's a big thing of sports culture, is just, and it's done in a healthy way of like, hey, everybody's working hard to make everybody else around them a little bit better, and putting those scores up and taking ownership of the scores that you put on the board, like, to me, that's a very important component that, running my gym, maybe I didn't do as good of a job of.
So there's a important component from that I think a lot of people lack and they miss. And one is, we a lot of times think it's for the top athletes in the world. It's not just for them. Like you said, hey, like, if Chris is a friend of mine, we train at the same gym and we're always going back and forth, and half the time he beats me, half the time I beat him, and we have this good, healthy, fun competitiveness to us. But, today I can't go in the normal time and train with him. I'm going in earlier before he does. I owe him me throwing down the best I can do. And if I think there was a little tip or trick that I learned near the end on the back half of it, and I'm like, I made an adjustment and it worked, I'm going to let him know, hey, here's what time I got. I should have did this from the beginning. This would have made me faster. I'm going to share everything with him. But it goes beyond this. And that's actually not even what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was, you create an atmosphere in your gym. How long are you at your gym? An hour or two, whatever it is a day, right? So if you're there 6 days a week, and you train 2 hours a day, that's, 12 hours in a week, right? And Jesse, how many hours a week do you work?
80 to 90.
Okay. So he's probably full of it. It's probably more like 120 knowing Jesse. That's 80 or 90. And he's like, well, I volunteer the other 50. So that's not work. It's volunteer work. No. So, okay. So when I say that, it sounds funny, right? But Jesse spends like 90 hours of work, a week working, right? So if Jesse creates an atmosphere that's optimized like he would for an athlete for his workspace, work environment, and his home life. So he optimizes his relationship with his significant other. He optimizes the way he handles and carries himself with him and his friends, make sure he stays in good connection with his friends, and keeps his friendships, he makes sure he's a good friend to his friends. And he only keeps people in his life that, reciprocate. Then what ends up happening is this environment that you will test out in a gym and recognize it in the gym first. And you see the gains you made in the gym first. Then think about what happens when I turn my 80, 90-hour work week and I turn my atmosphere with my employees or my fellow workers. I can create this atmosphere that I have in the gym to evolve. What happens if I create my home life and I set up an atmosphere to evolve? I have a saying, and Louis would, give me credit for it, talk about it. Like, it was kind of nice because, he agreed it's true. But it's like, I said, if it's not your strength, if it's not a strength, it's a weakness. Like if anything that you're not the best at, it's your weak link, right? So the deal with that is, okay, maybe you have a gym that you go to that has the ultimate atmosphere. You're training in a gym that's like Westside Barbell. The atmosphere is phenomenal. Your home life is phenomenal, but then your work life has a very negative atmosphere. The atmosphere is horrible and it's draining. Do you think you're really going to be the best athlete you can be and get the most results out of yourself if you have an area that's lacking? And what I was getting at by saying how much time people spend in the gym, we usually spend more time in other spaces. So if I'm a bad friend to the people in my friend group, eventually it's going to come back to a negative manner towards me. And subconsciously, I'm going to know that. So like, how can I feel truly good about myself? And anything that you do that's negative creates a stress in your mind. Like, no one else has to know it. You know it, so your body gets degraded a little bit from that stress. You spend a massive amount of your time in another area that creates negativity. You got to deal with that negativity. And, if you spend more time in a negative space than a positive space, it's not hard to think eventually you're going to become negative, right? So this atmosphere, these things, these qualities that we're talking about looking for in the gym, this is an area where you spend the least amount of time in your life, right? So it's not hard to think that we have to optimize our environment and optimize the type of atmosphere that we create in spaces around us. You can help control atmosphere. You have your energy, your personality, and who you are as an individual. Any space you can walk into, you can insert that energy. You can insert positiveness. You can insert knowledge. And so if you're that high level person, that person that's very capable, it's your job to start teaching others by example and showing them and demanding more of them to catch them up to speed. And the ones that catch up to speed and be part of the atmosphere, great. If someone just refuses to, are they really a friend of yours? Are they really a good coworker or an employee that you need to keep on hand? No. You don't need to keep them around.
I had an interesting one this week with just things being very, very busy, and ended up in a couple of sessions having to like switch gears. Like, just had an athlete reach out and they had some pieces changed for them in the day and needed some adaptation, like some changes to their programming, and they were in the middle of it. And so in the middle of my training session with my team, I had to like switch over, like run upstairs to the computer, hop on the computer, make some changes, reach out to them, make sure they're set up and good to go. And then again, I on another session had a meeting that conflicted with the training time and had to stop and shift gears and hop on a meeting in the middle of a session. And between those two sessions, or between those two things in a couple of days, I could see the effect that it had in the group. And just like who I was prioritizing and what that looks like in that environment. And you can, like, it's something where I was like, okay, I have to do better. Like, I've got to, like, it's okay once, twice here and there when it's happens. Cause there's other priorities that are hard not to let slip in, but there's a part where it's really cool to feel like you're a big enough piece in your training group that you could have a positive and negative effect. But I think it's really worth spending time thinking about, like, how am I engaging with my team? How is that being perceived? Like, are you helping load the bars? Like, or do you wander off and hop on your phone between your sets? Like, are you present for your set and then you wander off and come back? Or like, are you actually training with the people that you're training with? And I feel like if you commit to that and you really be present, work hard with those around you, that everyone wins. I mean, if you can level up the people around you when they feel like you're invested, they're invested in you, like, the uptick on that is palpable.
Yeah. And that's where that's where that saying where it's, if it's not your advantage, it's your disadvantage. That's everything in life. And it leads to kind of a few things like like Jesse talking about that. You see that all the time in the gym. I've had some lifters who are really good lifters who are strong, and like had a chance to be some of the best in the world, and they're like, my training partners don't like me, and I thought you said the group was really friendly. I'm like, they are friendly. Well, they're just being kind of rude to me. I'm like, yeah, I noticed that. Well, you said they're friendly. Yeah. How often do you put your weight away?
Yeah.
How often do you load bar? How often do you hand off without asking? Do you learn exactly how that individual likes to be hand off? Have you learned how your training partners receive information? Like, for me, I hate when someone yells for me like, come on, you can do it. It ticks me off. I hate when people say that to me. Some people love it. A lot of people love it. I hate it. Because in my mind, I want to look at them and be like, do I look like someone who didn't believe in myself when I showed up today? Like I have this internally. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have it, right? Like if I didn't have that thought process, I wouldn't be here. Don't tell me I can do it. Trust me, I know I can do it. I want to do more than what you're thinking I want to do. Trust me. Like this is not what I need. It'll tick me off. So if you know me, you won't say that to me. But there's also you might say, well, I heard you say it to someone else. Yeah, because it works for them. They love that. I need to be what they need me to be, so if it's not your advantage to your disadvantage. And that, that has led me to some thoughts in the last couple of weeks. It's funny because I hear people say, oh, 2 more years, I'm retiring. Or, all right, well, they're no longer breaking world records, so they're retiring. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm done powerlifting. Now you don't have any more world records than me. Okay. There's no quit in life, that life doesn't stop for you, right? Like you don't retire, you just adjust what you do, like I might not go to the same job I went to anymore. But since we need to, and once we get past 40, when we need to start introducing 10% more volume a year to maintain our abilities, that takes up time. I need to keep pushing. Am I going to hit as big of numbers once I hit a certain age? No, but that actually, I need more time and not less. There's no retirement. There's no stop. Like life does not stop, like someone's not going to come up and go, oh, I was going to beat you up and take your money, but I noticed you're 70 years old. Sorry, I'm not going to do that. Hell no. They look for the weak. People look for weak. They look for weaknesses. People feed on weaknesses. Don't give anybody an opportunity. But why would you lower your quality of life? Why would you not say, hey, I'm done. I get to chill and relax. What's chill and relax mean? Sit on your couch and watch someone else on TV do something cool? Like, don't you want to be the person who's living and experiencing life? Like, what do you mean stop? Like, what do you mean retire? I understand if you don't work, like, if you worked in a factory and don't go to that factory anymore. Okay, what are you going to do with that time? What are your hobbies? You like to go hiking? Okay, go hiking. You like to rock climb? You like to ski? What do you like to do? Time to put effort into that. You train more. You're getting older. There's no backing off. You only push the pedal harder and try to figure out another way to get that, dent the floor a little more and get that pedal down farther is what you have to do. Like there's no backing off ever. It's a really bad thought process to think retire, quit, stop, relax. What's relax? Hey, meditate, dude. Meditate every day. You want to relax? Meditate. That's cool. Get in a sauna if that helps. There's things you can do psychologically to relax. But sitting on a couch is not relaxing. That's just being lazy and letting life go by you. Like I don't get that. So, creating that atmosphere is also not, sitting on your ass at home, right? So yeah, Jesse, I'm sorry.
I mean, there's a piece where we were talking about like the effect that the team has on you and you have on the team. So committing to your team is one side of that. Committing to yourself, I would say, is the second side of that. And definitely, again, tying into just feeling like things continue to ramp and get busier and busier year after year, week after week. It's easy to have reasons to push back your training or like, look, today just doesn't work, not make it happen. I've already been working, like I'm 12 hours into the day for work. Now to log another 2 hours of training. I think there's a piece where your value to the people you work with, both as athletes or as other coaches, whatever your job is, the people you work with at your place of work, the friends, the people around you, all of those sort of groups, I think, benefit greatly from you producing the best possible version of you, physically, mentally. I think it's just such a piece that's easy to overlook. I hear people all the day, especially in Squamish, is a very family-oriented community. So people will prioritize their kids, make sure that they're like, look, I can't get to the gym today. I've got to get, such and such soccer or, dance or a million other things. And you're like, for sure. But I think it's important to, if that happens occasionally, similar to me taking calls in the middle of a session, you're like, don't let that be the standard. Find a way, because the better version of you that you can create, the more awesome it's going to be for all the people around you, not just your training partners in the gym, your family. You're an example, tip of the spear, right? Tip of the spear in the gym, tip of the spear at home, for your work community, for your gym community. I mean, it's such an awesome piece to think about. Like, if I take really good care of myself and make sure I'm getting enough sleep, I can show up sharp and ready to do my job to the best of my ability day in, day out. If I'm feeling like, when you're feeling on it, physically strong, like sore is one thing, but when you're feeling powerful and strong with your body and you're able to do the things you want to do, for sure, the effect that that's having on the people around you day in, day out is going to be noticeable. Like I find it impossible to imagine that is not a better outcome than, look, I'm not going to train, but I'll make sure they get to soccer on time, or that dinner's ready. Like, of course these things have to happen, but if you can't make time for yourself, that you're not putting your best version forward for everyone around you.
Yeah, I'm always at my most creative when I'm at my best. I have more to offer when I'm at my best. And don't worry, you're not going to be the best at everything. You have to be the best variation of yourself in all those instances. I look at, we all have different strengths. I'm not saying that we don't have some of the same strengths, but like I said, I look at Chris and I'm like, the guy's he's just always got a good, calm temperament where it's like, he's good, positive, where it's just a good energy where you run into him, you want to smile and you're excited to see him, right? Great thing to have as a coach, and he's knowledgeable. I look at Jesse. I don't think anybody at Jesse's gym thinks if there's a piece of equipment that they need or something breaks and they're getting ready for a competition, they're not going to sit there and go, oh man, I hope he gets that fixed or gets a new one in time for me to, for this competition. Everybody knows Jesse has one mode, work. So Jesse's going to get whatever the athlete needs. It's just how it is, we all have these different attributes as coaches, and some people are going to be better at different attributes than others, but people do recognize when you're given 100% of what you have and you're constantly trying to push it. But here's the thing, man. It's like anything else. You get out of it whatever you put into it. And while, all these athletes will get a lot more out of their sessions with you when you're working with them, when you're at your best, you get more out of yourself. Your significant other gets more out of you, and you get more out of that relationship. You get more out of your work relationships with, your coworkers and stuff. So it all comes back to you anyway. You're not wasting any energy, but the whole thing, the fact of like, I can't wait to retire so I can relax. No, I understand. You should be relaxed anyway. Even if you're working hard, the more calm you are, the more relaxed you are, the longer you're going to live, the happier you're going to be, right? So why are you waiting to retire to relax? You should be doing that right now. Well, yeah, I have so much to do. Well, you can work hard and you can meditate, you can work hard and you can relax when you might have a 30-minute window. Relax during that 30 minutes. Learn how to stay more calm when you're working hard, but when you retire, don't do less, do more, but stay calm and relaxed. That's okay. It doesn't mean you have to quit.
I do have to quit. I got about 10 minutes before I got to be downtown for a meeting. Any closing pieces from you boys for today?
We'll leave that to Chris because I talked way too much. Chris didn't get to talk much, so.
Maybe
I think he's like,
we've lost it. It turns out we lost it about 45 minutes ago.
Poor guy. Yeah. So, no, my closing thing is this. Take a look at your life as a whole.
Yeah.
Take a look at what things mean to you in what order. Put the utmost effort you can put into each of those things. You won't regret it. Don't look at life as when I get to stop, quit. I think looking at retirement is a time to quit. I mean, are you quitting on life? I mean, you're not working working and doing something that maybe you work a job that you don't really like, but it's what you need to do for your family. I get that. But when you're done with it, like, what's quitting? Like, what's relaxing? It's not sitting on the couch doing nothing. It's not watching other people live. It's go out and live. But you have to be in good enough shape and good enough condition to get there. And then you have to maintain that condition. So you are going to require more time in a gym, more time doing these things, more time working on yourself psychologically. Just not having that job, that 9 to 5 to go to, gives you the opportunity to have more time to work on yourself. It doesn't mean sit on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. We'll leave it there. Cool. I'm going to split and
have a good day, man.
We'll talk again soon.
All
Catch
right.
you, man.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Conjugate Nation podcast.